Hi, my name is Shannon Gaskell, and I'll be presenting on domestic violence groups. Domestic violence is a pattern of control and power that one person places over another. It comes in the form of physical, sexual, and verbal abuse. Domestic violence is very prevalent in the United States. 85% of victims are women, though it also affects men, children, and the elderly. About a quarter of women will experience domestic violence sometime in their lifetime. Witnessing domestic violence between parents or caretakers is the largest risk factor for children to behave violently as adults, and boys who witness abusive behavior are actually twice as likely to show violent behaviors to their own children and partners later on. Most cases of domestic violence actually go unreported. So domestic violence is a huge problem, and just its existence creates more likelihood for abuse in future generations. Domestic violence groups gives members a safe setting where they can process their experiences and trauma, as well as receive really valuable information on the different kinds of abuse, how to have healthy boundaries, as well as how to stay safe. If safer homes are created now, there will be more safe homes in future generations so that domestic violence doesn't have to leave its own pervasive legacy. As far as Christian homes, there is still domestic violence among Christians. Some husbands manipulate the scriptural truth of submission to mean that they can control their wives in an unhealthy way, and through that way they rationalize abuse. I think that truth about domestic violence, as well as what holy and healthy submission for husbands, wives, and children would be very useful for churches to emphasize. The church body can be a great source of support and safety for individuals in abusive households, and having domestic violence resources as well as groups may be a really great way of reaching out to individuals who are experiencing abuse in the home. There are many reasons why it's difficult to leave an abusive relationship. It may be dangerous, and that does happen. Sometimes there's threats of retaliation, threats of taking custody of the children. They might threaten to commit suicide. And so all these reasons make it hard for someone to leave that relationship. One partner may hope there will be change, whether that they can fix their partner, or maybe the partner will change on their own, or maybe this will just be a season and it will go away. So there's that hope. They may feel isolated and alone with no support. Maybe their family and friends don't support them leaving the relationship or the situation anyway. Or maybe they don't have friends or family to even be there to support them. They might be economically dependent, so maybe they don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have a car or any financial independence whatsoever, so that can make it even harder. That especially comes into play with children and elderly. They're especially dependent. For starting the group, advertising and having referrals are a large part of creating a group and recruiting members. And during the first session, once the group is formed, members should receive a disclosure statement so they have an understanding of what their leader will be doing, as well as confidentiality. That can't be guaranteed. They also should understand the group expectations clearly in the very first group, such as the time, dates, costs, and length of the group. Group rules should be formed together during that first session, as well as a way to encourage participation among all the group members, as well as be able to cultivate some more trust through the established rules. It's important that the group members are able to introduce themselves, as well as familiarize themselves with the other group members, as well as the leader, and communicate their expectations to the group, as well as any fears that they may have or other emotions. Group members will have the opportunity to process their experiences and ask questions in this type of group. And their role as group members is that they should participate and offer feedback, and because it will be in some ways an educational setting, because there's so much psychoeducation, to participate in that kind of learning atmosphere. Group members are expected to respect one another and also be good listeners. As far as the goals of the group, they should be that the members feel as though they can have a safe place to process through some of their experiences, and the material should be really applicable and presented in a setting and manner that is understandable and as well as interesting. By the end of the group members should be able to identify abusive behaviors and the warning signs of an abusive relationship, know what to do when they are in an abusive relationship, as well as how to help others that they see are in an unhealthy home. They should also have access to crisis lines, shelters, and more just general information about domestic violence. An important goal of a domestic violence group should be empowerment, to build the confidence and self-esteem of the victims and the group members. They should also see that they're never the ones to blame for receiving abuse, that that's never okay. And healthy communication and conflict resolution techniques should also be a huge goal of the group, in hopes that if they utilize those skills, it may serve to de-escalate some situations that may down the line lead to an abusive situation. For anticipated issues, group members may be resistant to participate in the group, whether it's because of shyness, sensitivity of the subject or topic, disinterest, discomfort, among other reasons. Conflicts between group members may arise that may affect the entire atmosphere of the group. Group members may have experienced deeply traumatic events in some of the curriculum material, or even conversations that come up may be triggers that may make it hard for members to want to participate or even return to the group. And abuse can be really confusing when it's by a loved one. And group members may feel really challenged by what they learn in the group, and they might be in denial also that it applies to their relationship. So they may disagree or refuse to be cooperative in the group or apply it, and they may not return. As far as the different group stages, the initial stage, there may be a lot of hesitation and resistance in that stage as members are getting to know each other and trying to feel more comfortable in the group and trying to open up. But leaders should try to promote trust building and try to promote participation by all the members so they can get to know one another. But some members might not buy in or commit, and they'll end up dropping out of the group. For the transition stage, there may be conflict, confrontation, and control. People may feel uncomfortable witnessing the conflict and worry about how they'll come across if they say anything or if they get involved in any way. There may be defensiveness and resistance. Members may be considering how much they even trust the group and trust themselves with opening up, and they might be trying to determine how much they want to involve themselves in the group. For the working stage, the members may be more committed to the group, willing to participate, as well as have a higher level of trust and feelings of cohesion. But there's still a risk for triggers, conflict, and fear. And new challenges arise as members become more aware of the feelings and thoughts they have as they process through their experiences and as they learn the material. So there may be some new things coming up that they might not have considered before. As for the final stage, members may have feelings of sadness and worry as the group comes to an end. The group might have been a huge source of support to them, so that they may be afraid of losing that support and afraid of what life will look like after the group ends. And there is a risk that members will pull back their involvement as their own way of preparing for the group to end, and they'll check out early. For ethical considerations, confidentiality can't be guaranteed because it's in a group setting. It depends on so many different people, but it should be encouraged that people can feel safe opening up in the group. As mandatory reporters, group leaders need to report any child or elder abuse if they become aware of it, and disclosure forms are a must, as well as keeping client files and records safe. In the handout, I listed a sample of a domestic violence weekly topic list. I pulled a lot of them just from sources that I found online, and I've never been a part of a domestic violence group, but through my internship site, I've helped with healthy relationships groups. And a lot of that information is similar, so I kind of pulled and threw it together. But a lot of the group is psychoeducational, and I think a lot of the material would be largely CBT. So for week 1, it could be defining domestic violence, just understanding the different kinds of abuse. Week 2, be discussing support systems and what could be potential sources of support, as well as coping skills, based on like maybe previous stressful experiences and trauma and how to deal with that now, as well as any additional coming stressors. Week 3, the different types of love, the romantic, addictive and nurturing love, and how those affect relationships and how that would look. Week 4, the warning signs of an abusive relationship, as well as the cycle of abuse. Week 5, power and control wheel versus the equality wheel. Week 6, healthy boundaries and self-esteem. Week 7, conflict resolution, I statements, communication and assertiveness, so that the group members can learn how to communicate in a way that isn't attacking the other person and might not bring out defensiveness in the other person, but they can still be assertive and get their thoughts and feelings heard. Week 8, controlling our behaviors. So using reasonable mind, emotional mind versus wise mind. Week 9, leaving an abusive relationship, because that's one of the hardest things. And I think that would be an important aspect to have in the domestic violence group. Week 10, what to do when others are involved. What to do when you see others are involved in abuse, and safety planning. So that could include hotlines and crisis lines, danger assessment, safe homes, emergency shelters, transitional housing, services for children affected by domestic violence, as well as supervised visitation services, just kind of talking through all those different options. Also in the handout, I included some of the national hotlines. So for domestic violence, sexual assault, as well as teen dating abuse hotline. So they're all pretty relevant. And toward the end of the handout, I included 2 wheels, the power and control wheel and the equality wheel, as well as the cycle of abuse at the very end. And those are just really common resources used for domestic violence groups. And I actually would like to kind of go through them as if it was being used in a group. So I made my own little cycle of abuse stages. So the honeymoon stage is often when the couple is just so in love and it's all about flowers and 3-hour phone calls and just all the lovey-dovey feelings. And this is for an abusive relationship. So it's not the standard for all relationships, but for abusive relationships. So maybe in the beginning it was this honeymoon stage, but then as the tension building stage comes along, there's maybe more arguments and more conflict, yelling, things like that. And then that in an abusive relationship would lead to the blow up stage, which that's where you see the physical, the sexual, the verbal abuse. From there though, maybe the couple breaks up, maybe one of them moves out or leaves, and that might have been good, but what if the person then decides to apologize and say, I'm sorry, and I miss you, and I won't do it again, and all of those different ways to try to pull the person back into the relationship. So then if they do decide to get back together, that's when you're back at the honeymoon stage, where it's all those wonderful feelings again, and you realize why you love them in the first place, and all of those things. And maybe if they never broke up anyway, it could still move to that stage too. But then that doesn't last forever. So then it's back to the tension building stage, and then it could go back to the blow up stage again. That's where the cycle comes in, is that, and that's what makes it so addicting to that person, that they know the good times and they know it can get better again, but then it often goes in this cycle where things get worse again too. So that's the cycle of abuse. The power and control wheel. In the middle is the power and control. So that's what the person wants. And this is for an abusive relationship, obviously. These little sections in the middle are kind of the tactics for how to gain power and control. So they may be using coercion and threats, intimidating, using emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing and denying and blaming, using children, using male privilege, and another option for this section would be gender roles. I've seen how that can be used instead of the male privilege, and using an economy. So those are some of the tactics in order to gain power and control. Then on the outside is where you see the violence. So sometimes that can lead to the sexual and physical and verbal abuse or the violence. And then there's the equality wheel. So if equality is the desire of the relationship, or of the person, then their goals then for having equality, or even like defining characteristics of an equal relationship would be negotiation and fairness, non-threatening behavior, respect, trust and support, honesty and accountability, responsible parenting, shared responsibility, and economic partnership. And then on the outside, you can see that there isn't any violence. So those are 3 different tools that can be used, and they're very common in these kinds of groups and healthy relationship groups in general. And yeah, I hope that was a helpful presentation, and thank you.